Bore da, welcome to this face-to-face meeting of the Powys Pension Board. And welcome everybody, and thanks for turning up in person. Nice to meet some people for the first time in a long time, and others for the first time ever in face-to-face. Some of us we met about a year ago, but it's, yeah. And apologies from one, I think, is it Chris?
Yes, Ian's passed on his apologies, yeah.
Ian's apologised, otherwise all present. And declarations of interest. I don't think there's anything obvious on there which we need to declare interest in, so assume there aren't any for the time being. And move swiftly on to minutes of our last meeting. Our last meeting on 21st of May. It was quite a heavy meeting, as I recall it. First, can I ask someone to propose a true record? Debbie, thank you. And everyone happy in favour of that? Yeah, nods all round. So, yeah, seconder, Graham, yeah, thank you. And matters arising from that meeting. As I said, it was quite a heavy meeting. At that time, we had some of the operational stuff to discuss, but that will arise again today. We'll take it in the item, I think. The same with the legislation. There's a few more twists to that to come. We had the annual report, which I prepared, and that will go forward with the rest of the annual reports. The risk register at that meeting, we had we were talking more about the investment side. Today we've got the admin. And draft compliments and complaints, breaches as usual. WPP, at that time we were very much preparing for everything that's happened since, which is seems to have gone successfully, and we'll touch on that under the WPP item. And we had the usual performance and touched on cyber as well. So if everybody's happy with that, we'll move on to the meeting of the Pensions and Investment Committee, which was held on 19th of June. They discussed our pension board minutes, and they appreciated the input from ourselves, and we did talk about recruitment. I presume we'll touch on that again later. And similarly to us with the admin and governance side of things, they had quite a long discussion on the Fit for the Future and the WPP proposal, which, as we said, has since gone to the full council and been approved there. And that was their sort of main course in that meeting. They had the business as usual WPP update as well, and also discussed the investment strategy, responsible investment. That was quite a detailed discussion, and they did set targets for net zero. I think the majority of the members did feel that they needed to set the targets and draw a line under that to move on, although the world seems to be moving in a slightly different direction to what it was previously in recent years. It's still a priority to try and save the planet, and setting targets is something they might have felt vulnerable without a target to. So I think it's the traction and actual making travel is the important thing, but having a target is important to some stakeholders. So the members thought they needed that. Equity protection was discussed. I think that will come up again with the investment strategy later in the year. Quarterly monitoring reports, admin performance was, we got that today again, and employer performance was nothing to worry about.
No.
Any questions on that? Are we happy to note and move on? Okay. Our first substantive item today is the administration update from Chris. So take it from there, Chris.
Diolch, David. Thank you very much, Chair. So yeah, this is a familiar item of the board to be recognised in the detail in this. Before I dive into the report, I didn't intend to go into much detail. Just noting board's comments on it previously that perhaps an annual update for this sort of information will be more helpful than a quarterly one. So I do intend to amalgamate reports 1 and 2 into one to pick up the important parts from this report, but amalgamate them into report 2 for future meetings. I'm afraid I haven't had time for this one, so rather than omit it, I've included it in its previous form.
Yeah.
So financial information's there as usual. Nothing in there that's surprising. It is as expected. A few larger numbers than in previous months, but things go up and down depending on transfers and benefits payable and whatnot. So nothing in there that I really wanted to draw out. Apart from item 3.1, and this is important because we'll touch upon this in the administration performance later on. You'll note that the membership's gone down. We did discuss this at the last meeting. This is partly in respect of backlog work that the team are now working through. And it's primarily down to the amalgamation of records. So if I use a real world example, which is quite common in Paris, is that somebody has multiple employments, 3 jobs. Potentially they might leave 2 and continue on in 1. There's the opportunity under the regulations to combine those 3 posts into 1 ongoing post. Obviously, if you do that, 3 moves into 1, your membership numbers will come down. The benefits and liabilities stay exactly the same, but the number of records and data that you have to manage becomes tidier and becomes 1 record. So because the team are working through those, that's 2 quarters in a row now we've seen the membership numbers increase, and that probably will continue whilst the team work through these backlog of aggregation cases.
That is common across funds really, and I think it applies to ongoing jobs as well. If they don't have to leave the job, they can be doing school dinner ladies and school crossings and everything, and have 1 record for all those.
That's quite a common example. So people who work in schools do tend to have multiple employments, and they do end them and start them again in different terms and whatnot. So that's quite a lot of work with regards to calculating deferred benefits and then aggregating them, particularly with McLeod as well now. McLeod will feature into that as well. So there's quite a lot of work going on with regards to what the team are working through, but we'll touch upon that in a bit more detail in the later item. But I just wanted to draw that one out, just so in case you have any questions around the numbers reducing.
No concerns.
Okay, no questions. Okay, that was it for that report then, Chair.
David, yes.
Just looking at table 2.1, Chris. I mean, clearly we've seen more payments than in just looking at overall. If you look at payments less income in the bottom line, is this now a trend? It's worth commenting because it's the cash flow position. We touched upon that at the last board, but just an overall view from you in your position about this, that would be really helpful.
No problem. Thank you for that, David. Yes, we've discussed cash flow over the past couple of meetings, as you're aware. Important to note this in context. This is just the administration side of the cash flows. Yeah. In overall terms, the fund is probably going to tip into a cash flow negative situation in the medium term, 5 to 10 years. We'll probably find that the fund needs to do something different to make sure that we have income to match our outgoings. Currently cash flow positive, if you include the investment income, but it will be at tipping point soon, which is quite common within the LGPS as the fund matures, as you all know. So In terms of the administration side, yes, you're right to point out that we're paying out more than's coming in. But overall, at fund level, we're still just about cash flow positive.
That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
It is a good question, David, and of course that table excludes the investment income, and to use layman's terms, if we didn't have the investment income, we were stuffed. So it's incomplete in terms of the overall planning. Having said that, I think what Chris and myself and Jane have had a couple of discussions on this cash flow. It is something we want to be mindful of going forward now, particularly with the new triennial valuation, which is likely to reduce. I don't want to predict it, but generally across the LGPS, it's likely to reduce contributions. So the contributions going down, that may bring that cash flow negative scenario closer to us. So in putting together our valuation report and the contribution risks and investment strategy further to that valuation going forward, we'll have to be mindful of that and ask Aon for an update on that tipping point, really, because it does have an impact on the investment strategy that we may have to have things which generate income in terms of investment vehicles rather than illiquid investments, and illiquids are really our best earner in terms of returns. So we want to try and keep some of that, but we'll have to be careful how much we do. Graham, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I was just wondering whether it's worth just having a comment on that with under 2.1, just to explain that whilst that's showing as the obviously the payments are greater than the income, just to add a line that however the overall effect of investments is still in a positive position.
Absolutely, I think it's a fair comment and easy made, Graham. So I'll consider that. I'll consider it when I build it into the amalgamation of the reports as I talk to him. But yeah, completely valid point. And just looking at that in context makes you think, oh dear, yeah, you're right. Perhaps I could just add one further thing to what the chair's mentioned then, and David touched upon in terms of cash flow. The committee agreed to a cash flow modelling strategy towards the end of last year. I can't remember the exact meeting. October rings a bell, which is considering this. Obviously, we're well aware that at some point this is going to tip over into cash flow negative, and we need to have processes in place to manage it. So the committee did agree to a cash flow modelling strategy, keeping that in mind. But completely valid point that the chair's made as well about any potential reductions in contributions coming into the fund, depending on how significant they are, might change things again. So we'll work closely on that one with the actuary.
Okay, thank you, Chris. So happy on that item. We'll accept the reports, and we don't need to vote on that, do we, Carry on? Just a note. Yeah. Okay, so moving to item 7 then, legislation and governance update, and that's you again, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Quite a lot of words in this report, so I don't intend to go through it bullet point by bullet point, just pull out the pertinent points. But 2.3, I do want to spend a bit of time discussing, which I'll come on to. So 2.2 is just there for board's information that the pension scheme bill was introduced to Parliament for its first reading in June. There's nothing really surprising in there. That is what we expected, and it's essentially looking to ramp up or step up the pooling agenda of LGPS and pension benefits within the UK. But I do notice that the hyperlink's not working in this report either. I think we had that issue at the last meeting, so I might just have to work with our Democratic Services team to get those hyperlinks working for you. So apologies for that. It looks like it should work, but it doesn't go anywhere. So I'll recirculate the reports with those hyperlinks functioning for you. But those in 2.2 just link to the actual government pages. It talks about the future consultation, which I'll come on to a later item when I talk about the Wales Pension Partnership. But I would like to spend a little bit of time just going through 2.3, if that's okay. And 2.3 is talking about the McLeod remedy, and you'll have heard me talking about this a lot over recent years. And essentially, it is just, again, high level, is a check that we have to carry out to ensure that benefits paid under the scheme are no worse off under the new career average element compared to what they would have been under the final salary element. For those people in scope, we do a test, and we pay the better of the two scenarios. That requires the team to have to go back and re-input contribution and part-time hours amounts for part-time members of staff, because that was the formula that's used to calculate a final salary benefit compared to a career average, when it's simply your pay divided by 49. So the team are working through that at the minute. The complication around it is that there's quite a lot to revisit. We have to unpick retirement benefits we paid, transfers we paid, all these sorts of benefits need revisiting and checking. But there's a requirement under the guidance of production of annual benefit statements every year. So we have to produce and distribute annual benefit statements to our scheme members by the 31st of August every year. With the intention that the annual statements this year include the McLeod element part of the pension benefit. But there's some confusion or some disparity between the guidance and the actual legislation on this item. So essentially where we find ourselves is that the guidance, which is not the law, says you should have completed your McLeod work, all your McLeod work by 31st of August 2025. The regulations don't quite say that. The regulations have introduced discretion, which allows you to essentially extend that period out for certain groups of members for another 12 months. Which is useful because we find ourselves in a position where it's not possible currently to calculate certain McLeod elements for specific categories of case. I think divorce cases where there's either a debit or credit, it's difficult to actually implement the McLeod remedy. So we'd have to apply that discretion for those groups of people anyway. But there's also scope within that to widen that discretion to essentially include those who haven't yet calculated, to say, we know we've got to tell you about your McLeod benefits. However, in your figure in your annual benefit statement, it's not included, but we will get it in there for next year. So what the Local Government Association have been saying to administrators is essentially, you can apply this discretion, but you need to discuss it at your pension boards, which is one of the reasons that we're doing here. I'm not expecting any decisions or anything today. This is just to highlight the issue. We might have to catch up about this at a later date. But also to get approval to apply that discretion by the Pensions Investment Committee or Pension Fund Committee before the 31st of August 2025. So as I say, we do find ourselves in that position in respect of certain categories of members, but it is helpful because it does just give a little bit of opportunity to a little bit longer to calculate benefits for those that we haven't yet processed. Because what we were going to do, we were going to find ourselves in a position where we calculated the McLeod benefits for some, but not all of the membership, and we'd have had to, within our annual benefit statements, explain that somehow. So this does simplify the messaging a little bit in terms of how we tell our scheme members, because this is very, very complicated, and trying to explain to a scheme member that they've got some protection under an arrangement that was from 12 years ago, and it's all very complicated, and communication around this has been very, very difficult. So what this does do, it does introduce some flexibility in terms of how we deliver that message to our scheme members. So there's no decisions been taken yet. We have still got another 5 weeks or so before the annual benefit statements are going to be issued, 5 or 6 weeks. So I'd imagine that we'll be working on this up until the very last minute. But it's just to raise the board that there is this flexibility introduced because of the disparity between the guidance, which should be followed, and the legislation, which is also the law. So we'll have to give some consideration into how we word certain aspects around this and what we include and what we don't include. So I'll be working with the Pensions Administration Manager on this closely. We have got a plan in place in terms of how we tackle any of these issues. So the divorce cases and those that we might not have calculated yet, how we're going to tackle those. And that's what the regulator is particularly interested in, i.e. as in, if you don't send out all your annual benefit statements, including the McLeod information, tell us the plan on how you're going to achieve that over time. So we've already established that and built that. So what I will do is I'll share that with board after this meeting, and then we can just pick up that discussion as to what the next steps in terms of getting the annual benefit statements out.
On that, Chris, with this sort of conflict between the guidance and the law, etc., it's often safer to be with the herd rather than being an outlier in these sorts of things. Have you spoken to fellow LGPS funds and taken a common view on this, or is it something we're dealing ourselves?
Thank you, Chair. Completely valid point. Yeah, I should have pointed out at the start to say we're not unique in this position as well. It's across the whole LGPS. So there's been a lot of discussion at the Welsh Pensions Officer Group, which is made up of the senior administration managers within Wales. And this is a common approach being adopted by, if not all the funds, the majority of the funds will be taking an approach similar to this. there's all sorts of complexities around this in terms of categorising the members. I think we've narrowed it down to 5 different types of member, which can then be consolidated into 3. So if we look at the end of 2.3, there's essentially 3 work streams to consider: active and deferred members, new cases, and retrospective cases. So all these people who may not yet fall into McLeod protection, but at some point in the future they might, because their circumstances change. How do we capture that? Those that we've already paid benefits out to that have now changed because of McLeod, how do we communicate that information? So there has been a lot of discussion, and to answer your question, yes, it's a group approach to this, not just an individual fund. So that was all I really wanted to touch on that part of McLeod, but I'm happy to take any further questions before I move on to the report, Chair.
Have you got the resources to do this, Chris?
Thank you, David. I think when we come in to look at the performance report later on, you'll see that we've started to now creep into over 100% in terms of a processing and administration caseload. That means we're eating into backlog. So to answer your question, yes. Have we got the resource to do it in the timescales that the government want is a different question, I think. I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic now, and we'll touch upon resourcing as a later item, but I can pick it up now, actually. We've currently got a job advert for 3 posts going out, if it's not already live, in the next few days, closing on the 10th of August, I think, which will be 3 additional bodies within the team. Not focusing on the administration, it's everything around the administration, but if we can improve processes and automation and whatnot, that should filter its way down to the admin team and help the automation numbers increase. So I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic. Can I categorically say that we'll get them all done by this time next year? I don't know. We'll have to see how progress goes, but we are now making some real headway into this work. Yeah.
I think following on from David's question, I think the admin figures are quite happening later on, that's in a good place. I think where I'm still concerned about resources is in the sort of manager level supporting Chris and the failure to recruit to those posts. I think I shared an example of another fund doing some communication to all the screen members, including McLeod in that recently, and obviously we haven't got the resource to be hitting that sort of level of communication at the moment, which is, so we're doing the in Welsh we call it the caibaraw, the spade work, but we're not doing the jazzy bits, perhaps to communicate with everybody, and that's where perhaps we need to give our attention to in resourcing going forward.
I think that's absolutely fair, Chair. I mean, there's the expectation on a modern LGPS fund now. The traditional LGPS fund has disappeared. That's no longer with us. We have to be modern now. We have to be on the front foot in terms of communications and systems, and expectations on us from scheme members has completely changed almost overnight. So we have to make sure that we're in a good place to be able to deal with that, which is what these posts are focusing on, as you rightly say. In terms of the processing, the administration numbers, I think we're there now. And the evidence is suggesting that we are there in terms of delivering the administration casework. You'll see some examples later on about how that's grown over time as well, actually. But we have had some gaps which have fallen onto perhaps some of the more senior members of the team to try and pick up over recent years in terms of this communications and the governance and whatnot. So we are putting steps in place, and I'm hopeful over the next few weeks we'll be in a better place.
Thank you, Chris. I can see no hands up wishing to talk, so we'll accept that part of the report. So
yeah, there's just a bit more if I could just work through the rest of the report, Chair, if that's okay.
Sure.
Thank you. So again, thank you everybody for that. Just to move on to 2.4 is just noting that the pension regulator have also issued a statement around this as well. So when the hyperlink's available, you can go and have a read of that. It's just supporting what I said earlier on. I'd just like to move on to paragraph 4 and onwards, if that's okay, which is talking about pension dashboards. Again, just to remind board, the pension dashboard is a government initiative where pension savers log into one portal and access all their pension information from one site, essentially. as a pension provider, obviously that has an implication on us because we have to make sure this member's data is available to access this portal. So we've been working on this for a number of years now, and we're expected to connect to the ecosystem by October this year. And so I just wanted to give board an update on how we're progressing with that. So essentially we have 3 phases leading up to that launch. Phase 1 is setting up the parameters. Phase 2 is connecting to the system, and phase 3 is actually the go live part of the project. So we've completed phase 1, which is testing our data against the dashboard's expectations, building in the matching criteria. And what I mean by that is when somebody inputs a national insurance number or a pay number, how does it match up with our system to make sure it pulls back the right data? Obviously, there's GDPR risks for this. If we get that matching wrong and it provides the wrong information to somebody, then that can't happen. So it's getting that balance right between being open enough and not too restrictive. So we've done some testing on that, and we're pretty comfortable with where we sit on that. And it's important to say that can be adjusted at any time. If we find that it's resulting in too many queries to our team because it's too tight, we can adjust it. Or conversely, if we get any reports of it being too relaxed, we can tighten it up as well. But I'm comfortable that we are where we need to be with that one. In terms of our data, we had a very, very low number of data errors. So data is in a really good place in terms of what the dashboard is expecting to see. So phase 1, which captures that bit of the work, has been completed. Phase 2, which is primarily being dealt with by our administration software providers, is testing the connection to the ecosystem. And that's due to happen in August, September, I believe. And then it leaves us with a month or 2 of final testing before we actually go live. So quite a lot of work has been done, and I'm quite comfortable with the progress. And I'm confident that we can hit the government's expectations in October this year. So that was the update on the pension dashboard. Happy to take any questions about it.
Well, I'll just ask one really, or start with a comment that I think it's from our fund's point of view, it's getting that data right, which is our main contribution to this. And if the data gets in dashboards and it's wrong, that would then create workloads and would be counterproductive. But so that's our big, not concern, but priority in this project, I think. I'm astounded. I'm talking to people in several different pension schemes and talking to Dyfed officers yesterday and they were talking to me about the fire scheme, but they also do the Dyfed LGPS as well, and they were very confident. Everyone I come across with dashboards, yeah, it's going to be on time and it's going to be okay, which is remarkable for a huge government-sponsored IT project to finish on time without a big overspend is almost unique. But I think one of the reasons behind that perhaps is that the number of software houses involved is reasonably low. I think it's, all of the LGPS is about 3 different software houses. So I think they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting in this project, and as they're few in number, it does mean that the interfaces aren't as many as perhaps they would be otherwise in other projects. So it will be interesting because some of the private sector pensions are also feeding into this, and that's another different interface altogether. But it's good that it's all positive on this, really.
Thanks, yeah. It is a positive from our side of things, but that's only part of the story. Once it goes live and we start receiving inquiries and queries from people using the system, that's the unknown for us. This has never been done before. So there is a real risk that it doesn't go very well and it inundates our team with queries and questions. So we'll have to wait and see. In terms of being ready for the government's timelines, I think we're all confident we can make it. But we don't know what's going to happen on the other side. So we'll have to watch this space on that one.
Yeah. You can't imagine that the questions will come into us about other pension pots. Does this include my pot from Prudential or whatever, which I've done on the side, etc. And they may have different timings, and they may and we may not be privy to that information to be able to answer. So it is fraught with danger, but it seems to be going well generally.
Yes, thanks, Chair. We'll see how that one goes. Just wanted to finish off this report then, just in 5.2, which is talking about the valuation. So we're working through the valuation process now, which is assessing the liabilities and the assets of the fund to determine the funding level and position ahead of some new contribution rates being issued to employers from the 1st of April 2026. The data has been submitted to the actuary. We've had several meetings at the officer level with the fund actuary to discuss the approach. Everything has gone according to plan. The data went across within the timescales. So now it's really over to the actuary to crunch the numbers, come back to us with any queries, which is usually part of the process where they find some outstanding cases that they need a bit more information, for example. We're awaiting those. But it's really in the hands of the actuary now to have a look, and we wait with anticipation as to what comes out in the initial feedback from them. But again, moving according to plan. The timescales expected on this.
Yeah, the valuation, this particular one is massive, isn't it? It's the implications in terms of how percentage funded we are and the consequent levels of contributions emanating from that will be critical. I think we're probably mostly LGPS looking to reduce contribution rates at some point, but it's how much is the big question, and you have to be guarded against, we haven't had a real depression since 2008. So things have been going very well on the investment asset side, but we could be hit by something in the term of this valuation the next 3 years, which we haven't had for getting on for 20 years by the end of this term. So it is a very important decision, and I've asked Chris and Jane if I can be party to some of the discussions with Aon as our actuary to just to observe and advise perhaps to a degree in terms of where we would feel comfortable drawing a line on that, because we have to be fair to both the employer who's faced with real financial strain, and to the fund, and trying to ensure that the fund remains well funded, and we don't have a sort of trampoline where we go down and then back up at the triennial evaluation following, which would be the worst possible thing for the employer as well. At that point, we wouldn't want to, because increased in pension contributions would be tantamount to a cut at that point in time, and that would be very difficult. So that's what we want to avoid, and to be sort of responsible and cautious perhaps in how we go forward. So Chris and Jane have been very receptive to my offer to be party to some of that discussion, and we'll come back to you as we move forward on that, I think.
Yes.
So have we done that item, Chris?
Yes, we have.
Debbie, come in.
Right. Can I just ask a quick question in connection with 2.3 and the McLeod remedy? Sorry, I don't know whether you mentioned it before, but can you just give board some clarity around, I know the implementation date or the decision date is the 31st of August. How are you going to, what's the process now for deciding how you'll utilise that discretion and bring it back to board satisfied, if, what grounds are for using that discretion, and if that goes to committee as well? How, it's a really short time scale, isn't it? So just.
It is, yeah. So what I'd propose is that I chat through the administration manager, arrive or formalise a decision on how we're going to take it forward. Have a chat with board, whether they have an informal or whether an online meeting or something like that, or whether we're happy to have an agreement outside the meeting, then retrospectively approve it. It's actually approval from the committee that's the important one on this one. Obviously, up to scrutiny by the board. So again, we have a committee meeting on the 3rd of September. So my thinking was that I get approval outside of the meeting via a call or something like that, and I get committee to retrospectively approve it at that meeting, if that was the case. Okay, yeah. Thankfully, we've got a meeting early September, which I think will make that a little bit easier.
So that will come to us retrospectively rather than, yeah, which is fine because we're reassured with the intention to go with the herd on this and to be careful in the way forward. So it is the committee decision. So
I think I could include as part of the next board papers, for example, say committee retrospectively do this on the 3rd of September, those sorts of information, that sort of update for board. Yeah.
And if the committee do have a call, I'm usually invited to those on your behalf as well. So I'll represent you in that consideration.
And I guess by us having this conversation now, it'll be recorded that we've had that discussion as well, won't it? So yeah.
That's right, Graham. That's why I wanted to raise it at this meeting, just so it could be seen in the formal arena that we've discussed it. There's more work to be done. Had we had this in a couple of weeks' time, I probably would have been able to present something different to you, but the timings haven't allowed for that. So it was important to discuss it today. We can pick it up again outside the meetings and then hopefully retrospectively do what we need to do to get it over the line, if that's okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're all happy to support that way forward. And so move on to item 8, which is the Wales Pension Partnership update, which Chris has been living and breathing for the last 6 to 8 months to a degree, along with other LGPS officers across England and Wales, really. We seem to have come out to it. Well, we're seeing light at the end of the tunnel now, which some of the pools have not. This is now all in the public domain, isn't it, Chris? So it's we've had to be cautious on what we put in the public domain at some points over the last 6 months, but now it's all out there. So do you want to present your reports?
Thank you, Chair. The first part of the report is just the usual quarterly papers that the WPP circulates for information, so I don't intend to go through those in any detail. Those are for information and they are their reports. So I would just like to spend a bit of time on bullet point 3, which is Project Snowden, which we just talked about. So brief bit of history. October last year, the Chancellor held their Mansion House speech, and within that there's discussion around reforming the pensions landscape and whatnot. Out of that came a consultation in November 2024, which focused specifically on the LGPS, which was called the LGPS Fit for the Future. And within that consultation, they were seeking views on their proposals to consolidate pooling, try and ramp up pooling, essentially. There were 8 pools within England and Wales, all delivering this for their partner funds, but using slightly different models, different operating models to do that. So within their consultation, one of the things they were looking to do was to try and rationalise that into one method of delivery via an FCA, a Financial Conduct Authority, authorised entity, which the Wales Pension Partnership was not. They hired in that expertise via the pool operator called Waystone Management UK Limited. So on receipt of that consultation, obviously there was a lot in it which we had to consider about how we can change the way the Wales Pension Partnership does what it does to be able to meet the government's minimum requirements. And alongside that consultation, the government requested a business case from each of the pools in England and Wales as to how they were going to meet these new minimum requirements. So the Wales Pension Partnership prepared a business case into which all the funds fed into, and we submitted that to government in February 2025. We then received a response from government in April 25 to say, green light, essentially, we approve your business case. Please proceed and implement it according to what's in there and our timescales, which are 31st of March 2026, essentially very, very tight. Which was great news. That made the discussions that we had at council last week or the week before a little bit easier, because we did have the government support in implementing the Project Snowden, which is the project group that the WPP set up to deliver this proposal. So at the committee meeting of the 15th of June, I prepared a report which was a covering report to a draft report that then went to council on the 10th of July. And within it, it essentially said, these are all the reasons and benefits for us continuing with the Wales Pension Partnership, but changing our model to meet the government's requirements to deliver pooling going forward. So committee considered the contents of that report, and I'm pleased to say they supported what was in that report, and they made a recommendation for council to also support that report when it actually went to council on the 10th of July. So they also approved the revised Wales Pension Partnership business case, because that included an amended budget to reflect the running of this project and the setup of the investment management company. So at the council meeting on the 10th of July, the report was taken, and pleased to say that the council had a strong support for the next steps. So they approved all the recommendations in the paper, the main one of which was to actually set up the implementation of the investment management company. So the WPP IMCO is what it's been called, the investment management company. And that needs approval from the 8 administrative authorities within Wales. So the fact that we were able to get ours over the line, we were the 5th out of 8 to approve it. So as far as I'm aware, there are still 3 that need to take it through their full council. That might have changed since we last met, but my understanding is there's still 3 to go. So next steps after we get those approvals, which is what we're hopeful of, is to actually implement the creation of the investment management company in shell format, whatever it might be. But the first step is get that company built, and all the agreements and whatnot that come around that in terms of naming senior management officers, those sorts of things. Those will happen in the near future, and with the intention to submit an FCA application towards the end of the summer holidays, I guess, towards maybe the end of September, I think is a target date to try and get FCA submissions in. So the next couple of months, the focus is going to be on actually building this framework for this investment management company to then be able to submit the FCA application. So that's the focus in the next short term. Within the recommendation as well was that any further approvals or with regards to setting up this and implementing the government's initiative is delegated to the Section 151 Officer and a Pension Investment Committee, much like the council does with all the other pension fund matters. That's all delegated to the committee through the scheme of delegation. So there's two parts to actually hitting this timescale of 31st of March. One, we're nearly there at, which is actually building the company. And the second one is actually the go live stage. So it's all well and good building it. We've got to put a lot in place to make sure that we're able to go live for the 1st of April as well. So that's going to be the focus of the next 6 months, is getting those important items over the line and building the framework around the company to make sure that we can deliver on the 1st of April. We're very fortunate because within the FCA arrangements, we are able to move across a lot of what's already been built and is working well at WPP into the FCA framework. There's some changes around the edge when it comes to shareholder agreements and board of directors, those sorts of things, which we haven't got currently. And that's what we're going to work towards establishing over the next 6 months. So that was what I wanted to draw out of that part of the report, Chair. Obviously, you've been heavily involved in this process as well. Whether there's anything you wanted to add, I'll hand over to you or questions now.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, I think one thing you didn't mention, which was critical to getting this across the line in Powys full council meeting, was that on the 4th of July, there was a seminar for all the council members.
Yep.
And the council members generally don't deal with pensions. They haven't got a scoopy about the matter. So that's Chris presented in that. It was just an hour, but Chris presented for most of it. Jane spoke, and I spoke a little bit at the end as well. And we managed to bring all the backbenchers up to speed as to what was, and it's important, of course, for making decisions that they're aware of the context and informed to make the right decision, and that process was critical, I think, in that, so that when it came up on the day in the full council meeting, we were 3/4 of the way over the line before we started talking, and there was some talk about responsible investment in various regions of the world, etc. But there was no negative feelings at all from the members in going forward. Having said that, there are challenges to this project going forward. The timescales are still, as Chris says, to get that in place by next April is very challenging. There's things like legacy assets. We've got things like a hedge fund, which are not pooled at the moment. That needs to be pooled in some way or other, and there's talk of different ways of doing that, like pool oversight rather than full pool. wise. There's recruitment to the new investment managing company that may prove difficult, and you know, getting the right people on the board and in the CEO and the chief investment officer type posts, which will have to be created, and there may be some flack when the salaries of some of those posts are flown as well, but they will be posted in a private company rather than in local government. And then there's still, the legislation is still going through. Parliament are currently debating things like the mandating of investment in the UK.
Yeah.
That's very much in a state of flux this week, I think. So there's still some way on the journey, but I think we've done very well. And I was at a conference recently where some of the funds in the Access and Brunel pools, which haven't had to go ahead to continue with their plans, they're calling themselves orphans now. So they're having to go to other pools to try and find a sort of parent to take them on as a client almost, and rather than being a fully fledged partner in a project going forward as we are, and it's really good for Powys that as the smallest of the 8 in Wales, we have an equal voice in that discussion, and we've done well out of that. So it's really pleasing where we've got to compared to some others, and where it's a real headache for some of them across the board. That you know, there's 10 or 12 funds in Brunel and Access. Some of the others might take them all or might not want them all because they become too influential as a block within the pool taking them on. It's a really interesting but challenging scenario, but I think it's really strong that we're managing to continue as Wales. There is a different context. They've got different structures like mayoral, regional. We've got things like joint committees, etc., which are different, and it was, you know, we've got things like a Wales audit regime, Welsh Language Act, and Future Generations, which is different from England, and all that was taken into account in allowing us to continue as a Wales pool. So it was pleasing that was to a degree in initial legislation, and also getting the green light to continue. And so we're not over the line. We're over the line in terms of Powys Council, but there's lots of work to carry on with this, and I can only thank Chris and Jane and people like Clive and all sorts who've been involved in putting this together, and we'll have to be again going forward. So thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chair. No, I think the important part throughout this is we've established the governance pathway we need to travel down to make sure we make it happen, and there will be challenges along the way, as you rightly identified. Yeah.
Any questions?
Yeah, that's a really good term, Chris, governance pathway, because that's the complicating factor for this, because this is a company limited by guarantee, I'm assuming, that'll be registered at Companies House. Yeah. And then there's the recruitment of all the senior staff. There's the recruitment of a board. Yeah. Presumably then there may even be an audit committee, because there may be, I'm not saying, you know, because the assets under its supervision will be considerable. The question I got, is there going to be a separate legal advisor for this to make sure that it is completely governance compliant? Because it's not Waystone, is it? Because they cannot, in my view, because they are providing the advice in a different area, then that would be a conflict.
Absolutely, thanks, David. No, perhaps I should have pointed out that throughout the whole process, the WPP have been receiving legal advice from their legal services provider. So there is an independent legal firm which has been reviewing this documentation. We've had input from the monitoring officers from all 8 authorities as well throughout this process. So yes, it's not Waystone who are providing the legal opinion. Yeah. That is being sought independently. Yes.
Just to follow up, that's a legal opinion, but who's providing, where does the advice come from to set this up legally?
The WPP's legal advisor is Burgess Salmon. So Burgess Salmon, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Burgess Salmon have been legal advisors since 2013, I think. So it's a long-standing contract which has been renewed, but they're obviously being very busy with the new developments. Who've been very busy with all this work in addition to the J job, of course. Thanks, Chris. Right.
That's all the attachments there.
Yeah, let's just skip risk register. And yeah, last time we were talking investments, this time we're talking admin and administrative risks. So perhaps we go through them in turn. There's a couple of pages of this. Failure to pay pensions lump sums on time.
So Chair, can I just for board's convenience, I think we reviewed this 3 meetings ago, so it's not that long ago you actually considered this. So
Okay.
So things might not have changed very much in the meantime.
Yeah.
If we want to work through them one by one, that's absolutely fine. I've got one item which I would like to pull out as we work through it then, if that's okay.
Okay. I was only going to call them if anyone had anything to suggest on these, but they're quite recent and there's not a lot has changed in the admin field really. There's been lots of change in governance and investment side, but less in the admin apart from our old friend MacLeod, of course. The second one, the systems risk, which I suppose that's reducing as a risk with things being hosted and it's lots of information in the cloud, etc.
It is, but that was the one item I wanted to pull out actually, and it's related to cybersecurity. Obviously, as more things get hosted, you need to be comfortable that the procedures and the policies that these companies have in place are secure. There's also an expectation under the regulator's new code. I say new, it's more than 12 months old now, that the fund has its own cybersecurity policy.
Yeah.
You've heard me talk about this at previous meetings, so it is my intention within this calendar year to set up a fund-specific cybersecurity policy. But I think it's since we discussed this item, I can't remember if it's the last meeting or the previous meeting to that, we've been in contact with our providers and sought assurances that the systems and protocols they have in place are meeting the expectations we need. And I've reviewed them and I am very, very comfortable with the position that those companies are in. Obviously, it's a key risk on their risk register that the fact they host data for many, many pension funds across England and Wales, that they have to have strong measures in place. So they've given me those assurances. We've had a similar discussion at a local level in terms of the payroll provider, that processes are in place and in train to make sure that they meet what we need. So in terms of the cybersecurity side of things, I've got no concerns, but I just wanted to highlight that we do need a fund-specific cybersecurity policy, which I'll try and implement this calendar year.
Yeah, I think it's probably healthy to have a fund-specific cybersecurity policy. It's very difficult to separate the fund from the council in terms of the IT operations, though. And I think last time we discussed this, I suggested that perhaps there was a security operations centre.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of progress with IT on that side?
I haven't been able to consider it in any detail. The intention is that we get a governance officer in ASAP that will pick up these bits of work. And that's primarily because I haven't had any concerns around the risks. So when it comes down to just sitting down and writing the policy, I will revisit your recommendation or your suggestion, and then we'll go from there. Yeah.
I think WLGA and that were trialling an SOC for Welsh councils generally, etc. So it would be interesting to see where that's got to. But yeah, I appreciate that you need the resource to go after these things.
But that's not me negating the importance of this. I have done some work on the assurances that we received. It's just actually implementing the policy that
Okay.
we've been operating the councils in the time being.
Yeah. Fine. If we're happy with that one for the time being, then there's others here. The third one on failure to hold scheme members' personal data securely. I don't think it's as sensitive as people in Afghanistan, but it's again not to be released, of course. Accurate records in form. Dealing with stakeholders, communicating. Yeah, well, that's another one where we'd wish to up the ante, as we mentioned earlier, if and when we get the resources.
Again, just the board's assurances, really. We're hitting all the statutory requirements we have to in terms of communications. It's the developments or the improvements on those that we want to really implement with the communications person. But in terms of statutory position, we're uncomfortable. Yeah.
Patterns of ill health, that's almost outside our control, but
it is, but we discussed that as part of the valuation process. So I've had a conversation around those patterns with the actuary, because obviously they need to incorporate any potential, they don't know obviously, but any potential health retirements and the costs that has for the fund. So we've had discussions and looked at patterns over time, and made a decision on implementation of those for this valuation.
Good. Pensions admin, huge impact, but very low likelihood probably on that one.
We adjusted the score at the last meeting, I think, actually based on the discussion we had around that. Yeah.
And overseas, you've got a control in place on that one for existence.
Yeah.
Everyone happy with the risk register without alteration then? Yeah, David?
Yeah, brief question. With the risk register, Chris, it's not possible, in fact, might not even be a good use of resources to get everything to a green current rating. Are you living with some of those risks and in a way that's a controlled manner and saying, actually, to take it any further, we won't take that action? Do you see what I mean? Yeah.
I do. I think the terminology they use is we tolerate the risk. I think that's the term. I think I completely take your point. It'd be nice to be able to get all the residual scores down to green. I think it's just some of the risks will always be at a place where if it happens, there's a significant really potential. Not to say we can't work towards them, and that'll be one of the tasks of the governance officer will be to have a look at this, deep dive, go through it risk by risk and identify any areas of potential improvement. If that's the case, hopefully next time you see these risk registers, they'll be in a more up to date and very considered place.
I actually skipped over one of those in the sixth risk of people living longer, and there's been some sort of evidence out there, not specific to Powys, but of that sort of changing or at least reaching a plateau now. So that one might be something we can look at and maybe able to turn to green after we have the final valuation data, perhaps, Chris.
Absolutely fair point. Again, this is another one of those conversations we've had with the actuary. We look at patterns over time in terms of longevity. And I'm not an actuarial specialist, but I think you're right. There's a change in the level of improvement of life expectancy. I think that's how they term it. So we are still living longer, but the speed at which we get there is tailing off. And obviously, as a pension fund, that has an impact on our liabilities and how long we have to pay them for. So yeah, we've considered those discussions as part of the valuation work as well.
Thank you. All happy with the register? We'll scroll down to the next item, and it's all there for
The whole
information, isn't it? So now we're going to the conflicts of interest policy, which we have managed to update here. Do you want to take us through that, Chris?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah, so you've seen a few policies appear on the agenda of the past meetings. The council operate a system which sends out reminders when policies are due for review. It was the conflict of interest policy's turn for this meeting. If you've had the chance to read through the document, you'll see I haven't changed it very much like the last one. I did include track changes on this one, so hopefully that makes it easy for you to see what's been amended. And if you've had the chance to look, it isn't much, to be honest. I did revisit the whole policy in its entirety and its attachments. It is still appropriate and relevant in my view. I've just updated the version management control, so we can see when things are reviewed at a glance rather than having to trawl back through my old documents to do that. So that's the first update at the top of page 94, and then you'll see grammatical amendments really throughout the document. The content is essentially the same. And I'm just scrolling through now. Yeah, there's very little update. So it's essentially to give those who may not have seen this document before the chance to have a look at it and review it. And the intention is if board are comfortable with this, that I'll take it forward to then committee in September for approval. It's quite a lengthy document with appendices, as you can see. But I did compare it to conflict of interest policies that other funds have. It's very similar. Whether we all based it off an LGA template or something, I can't remember. But it's very consistent with some neighbouring funds. And it does run alongside any conflict of interest policies that the council have in place as well. So it's a fund specific conflict of interest policy. It does not step on the conflict of interest policies that the council has. It works alongside it essentially. So that was it really, Chair. Hopefully you've had the chance to have a look at it. It is quite lengthy, but hopefully you're comfortable with the content. As I say, if you are, the intention is for me to take any comments on board and present a version for approval at the committee meeting in September.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I think just to prove that I have read it on page 95, where it says to whom this policy applies, and the second line under that, it's including an independent chair, I think.
Right, okay. Yeah, gotcha. Yes, it is.
Looking after myself.
Well spotted, yeah.
That's just to prove I've read it.
Thank you.
But generally, yes, it was useful to get the track changes, which shows what's changed and focus on those really. And I'm very happy with the concept, Debbie.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just thank Chris for doing the track changes? Because I know I'd mentioned that would make life a lot easier, and actually it really does. Because we can just home in on those and approve as a board, and it certainly helps me. So thank you.
No, absolutely, Debbie. That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
No, that shows we're a learning organisation. We mentioned it last time, and it's been done. So it's yeah. So was there a recommendation on this to? We don't approve.
No.
We just endorse it to move forward to the committee. Really.
Apologies. I was scrolling through. I noticed at the top I put approval. I think that's probably misleading. It should just be, as you say, to note and to support for the committee.
Yeah, we'll endorse it with that minor typo to be proposed to the committee. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And standing items, there's item 11. I don't think there's a lot of content there, but it's noted.
Perhaps I'll just make one comment, if that's okay, Chair. Just referring back to our McLeod conversation earlier on about the anti-benefit statements and whatnot. It might be worth us considering at the next meeting that we note something on the breaches register, just in terms of what any decisions taken. It's not reportable to the regulator in my view, but I think noting it is appropriate and will demonstrate that should we have any conversations at some point, this is the reason behind that decision. So that was it. It's not included on this, but we might want to consider that, how we do that for the next meeting.
Yeah, so by the next meeting we'll know the correct wording to put in there as to what we've actually we've done. So that sounds sensible. And yeah, Chris did mention this to me in advance, and I thought, oh, we're being very harsh on ourselves calling it a breach, and it's not really. No. We're still within the law, etc. But if it doesn't have to be reportable, to the TPR, etc., then we're probably doing the right thing in noticing it. So next time, this time there's not much to say then.
No additions. No, I do review the breach register ahead of every board meeting. There's nothing to update on it.
Okay. Do we go straight from that to my update? Oh, we have a
You have some text I think you need to
Yeah.
read out. Yeah.
okay. So we need to go as an exempt item henceforth. So the board needs to consider, in accordance with section 106(8) in brackets of the local government pension scheme regulations, whether we go into confidential agenda with the public and press being excluded, as some of the information may relate to financial or business affairs of a particular person or organisation. So commercially sensitive, etc. Anyone propose that we go exempt? David, yeah, and Graham's. Okay, all in favour. Thank you. Carry on. Do you want to press a button?